Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. And this is coming from the test server, part of episode 45, Shock to the System. We have a new ally coming, Static. Now all indication is that Static is going to be available to purchase off the ally vendor for 500 source marks. But if we take a closer look at him here, we have his combat ability as Electro Shield Punch. Launches an explosive charge projectile, damaging enemies and protects you with a damage reduction shield for 10 seconds. Polarizes enemies, causing objects to be attracted to them. His first passive ability, Static Surge. So electrifying or polarizing an enemy increases critical healing chance and magnitude, but reduces the total healing done for 20 seconds with a 30-second cooldown. And then his second passive ability, Electric Overcharge. Using a supercharge increases critical ability and critical weapon chance for 10 seconds relative to the supercharge cost. So it just means that the stats are different depending on what supercharge you use, 2500, 5k, or 10k. So before we jump to the spreadsheet so you can actually see how much damage he actually is doing on targets, let's take a look at his preview here.
Bring it.
So taking a look at Static here, it's not going to be an ally that you're going to be using solely for damage. So this is tested as CR 395 on the 5 sparring targets in House of Legends and the single sparring target, as well as the Injustice bounty in Infernal Kondak. So as you can see here, his damage is subpar by comparison on each one. Now this is obviously compensated by the fact that you get that 30% damage reduction shield, which I'll show the effects in a moment. This is also subject to change. I mean, this just came out on test server, so these numbers could be adjusted by the end of the testing service period. Now, if we take a look at another example, because most of these just do deal damage, but say we look at Death Metal Batman, he's got those stacking debuffs when he summons, and he's doing 700k in the same situation, which is 200k less than Static. So there's certainly an argument to be made that Static should be similar to Death Metal Batman because they both deal damage and they both have a secondary powerful effect. But at the same time, basically it's that trade-off. I mean, do you want the extra protection or do you want the damage? That's the choice you have to make as a player for both AoE and single target. So let's jump back into the game and break down the damage reduction shield for you. Okay, so we're back on the Injustice bounty just to show a more practical example of the Static shield. What I also have is E-bombs and the Superman ally shield, just to show you that basically their interactions together as well. So that's why I'm not using my load. It looks a bit weird because I've got the finisher obviously for E-bomb, I've got the breakout for Superman, and I don't want to use any burning damage because fire's defense will increase if you're damaging burning enemies. So my defense is going to stay at 217k. So we'll pop over to the bounty here. Get some base numbers here. Number will pop Static. And this will be able to see the duration as well as the total absorption. Okay, so now we'll just quickly jump up here. So we can see from the numbers here. So back on Double Fist, did I get hit by Double Fist before? No, back fist. It'd be nice if we did the same thing. Well, you can see at least with the melee attack. So melee attack with the Static shield was 28k, and the shield absorbed 12k, and the melee attack before was in 38 to 41k. So we went from 38 to 41 to 28. Did I get hit by a Hammer's Fist before? Of course not. That would be too convenient to get hit by the same attacks. But same way, you'll see absorb 20k, absorb 32k, absorb 12k, 11k, 16k, 28k. So you can see the impacts of just using the Static shield just as yourself. So it's one of those things where you're trading off the ally damage for more damage reduction. So it could be a situation where, say, like you're running like a duel by yourself or like an alert, where you can switch to static so that you may not have a healer or tank in the group, and then you get some extra damage absorption to protect yourself. Where necessarily in a raid, as a DPS, for example, or a healer, you're not going to necessarily benefit from the damage absorption on static as an ally, so you may choose to run something else as a combat one. So just to show the interaction here, we'll get just 10 stacks here. I have to use some healing before too. That's going to make the log a bit messy. Okay, so now we've got the shielding effects there. We'll pop the Superman ally and then the static shield. And then okay, everything should be fired there. So what we're going to see now, if we go back to that same log, that's about where during termination. Where would we pop it here? So inspiring breakout, that's the Superman shield. So Superman shield, Superman shield, Superman shield, Superman shield, Superman shield for the first 6 hits. And then we're dropping down to E-bomb shadow for the absorption. And at the end of E-bombs was the static punch. So what you'll see is that I'm technically using 3 damage absorption abilities at once. And what you're seeing is they're not stacking. They're extending the duration, but they're not actually stacking. This would be a better example of once I get static off cooldown again, I'll show. But essentially what I want to say is that each one of these abilities will give you a 30% damage reduction. What they're not going to do is stack. You're not going to get 90% damage reduction on a move. Basically what happens is whichever you use first. So say, for example, I hit the Superman shield there first, or was it the finisher? I used the finisher first, but then used the Superman shield right after. So basically it takes, that's why you saw the first 6 hits. I know it's a bit awkward burden termination. I won't use that in this example. But for example, this one, we're just going to use Superman shield and the breakout to make it a bit more clean. So we'll take some damage. And then we'll pop static and the Superman shield. And what you're going to see is that the damage reduction, I'm not getting both damage reductions on one hit. That's why you only see one gray number, is basically they're taking precedent over each other. So combat lock here. So even though I popped both at the same time, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 absorptions on the Superman shield, which makes sense, absorbs damage on 6 hits. And then right after that was done, then it went into the static punch, and that's why you got the 2 hits from there. So you can use multiple abilities at once. All it's going to do is essentially extend the duration, which means that as soon as one finishes or elapses, like the 6 hits on Superman shield, it will go into static punch. So you don't want to use these together because you're just wasting damage absorption. At that point, you want to work the timing out so that you use static. Say for example, you're a tank. If you're using this as a tank or whatever as a DPS for survivability, you want to use a 1 at a time essentially. So pop your static shield. Once you see that expire, then you hit Superman breakout. Once that expires, then if you're using E-bomb, you can work out your finisher or use E-bombs first. When E-bombs expires, then you go into your static shield and Superman shield. So vice versa. So you can still use the 3 combos together, so that pretty much you have like an extended perma duration almost of damage absorption on top of everything else. It's just you have to make sure that you're doing the correct timing, because if you overlap them, it's not going to work. It's just going to take 1 damage absorption, and then once that elapses or finishes, then it will go automatically into the next. So if you pop all 3 at once, you're just wasting the effects. Just make sure the timing, you can spread it out to where you can pretty much, I would imagine you'll be able to almost sustain the damage reduction until the static cooldown's back. Especially with either Gemini still around until those changes come out. You'll be getting your static ally back sooner. Say, for example, use Aquaman. So you could probably reach an almost perma state of having a 30% damage reduction. But that'll be more tested on live. Okay, so taking a look at statics first, passive, we've got static surge. So electrifying or polarizing the enemy through superpower increases critical healing chance and magnitude, but reduces total healing for 20 seconds with a 30-second cooldown. And at rank 10 is 20, 30, and minus 15% healing. Now that should sound really familiar because that is the transformation card. Transformation card gain 20%, 30%, reduce healing by 15%. So all static surges is just the transformation card for an ally. And obviously there's that 10-second difference where a transformation card, you're going to have 100% uptime, where the static surge, it has a 30-second cooldown, but you get 20 seconds of it lasting. So that means you got 10 seconds of downtime basically, which isn't bad considering that most healers now, until either Gemini changes, at the time of this recording it hasn't, it's going to most likely you're going to be running Purple Healing Ray, either Gemini or Scrap, or you're running like either Gemini, Purple Healing Ray, and Page of Destiny. There are some that still, like a pure healing is still kind of like Page, Trans, and Purple Healing Ray. But the main issue here is more so now just because either Gemini is still around and healers aren't going to really sacrifice anything. But for electric, for example, because now I know people are going to say, well, other power sets can't electrify or polarize. That's the point. So this developer has said that going forward, there's a high chance or high probability that we get power set specific allies, or at least allies that have passives that are specific to power sets, where this one is an electric ally essentially. Consumables don't work, so if you try to get like the electrify or polarize consumable and use that to proc the target, that doesn't work with the ally. Technically there are abilities like Word of Power that does electrify, but you're not going to use a 5k supercharge just so you can get the effects of transformation card for 20 seconds, because you're not going to be able to consistently spam that Word of Power off cooldown. So yes, there's other power sets, say like gadgets too, but same thing, why gadgets is going to want to proc the transformation card healing effects. So yes, there are other allies other power sets you can technically use electrify and polarize, but you'd have to completely change your rotation around, and it's not worth it considering that you can just use transformation card itself. So think of it as this is specifically designed for electric in mind, which it is. But the issue is that with either Gemini now, you're running 2-3 supercharges. You still have to take your priority and group heal. And then, at least with electric, Galvanize is very strong. It heals NPCs. I mean, it's a great heal. But if you need to electrify and polarize, you have very limited options. You have static push to polarize as your supercharge generator. It's not going to heal, but say, for example, when either Gemini is changed in the future, then if you want to use like a supercharged regeneration build for shields, then you could technically still use static push and polarize that way. Other than that, your other option, Repulse, which once again is useless. Don't use Repulse as a healer. And for Electrify, you have two. You have Voltaic Bolt, which once again, it's not going to do anything as a healer. Arc Lightning is a good heal, especially if there's the group is close together because it'll arc between them. But the issue is that where are you going to slot that in? Are healers really going to drop Galvanize just for Arc Lightning? I mean, it's a possibility, but Galvanize is really strong in terms of a heal. I mean, some electric mains out there can tell me otherwise, but I really doubt that you'd be dropping Galvanize for Arc Lightning. If anything, you drop a Supercharge and then run Galvanize and Arc Lightning just the Arc Lightning to proc that. Yeah. So you need the priority heal and group heal for your Purple Healing Ray. I mean, technically, same thing. You need to recover for like Page of Destiny if you're running that. So really the priority and group heal are kind of fixated in healer rotations just with artifact synergy. So if you really want to run 3 supercharges and then drop Galvanized just to use the transformation card effects, I mean, you could. I mean, that's plausible. I mean, your healing would drop, so I don't know how solo healable, but I mean, at the same time, you'd be spamming bio and recover to proc Purple Healing Ray, so I mean, that's always a possibility. Or you drop a supercharge, run arc, and then still have Galvanize. But really, that's going to be up to the healers themselves if they feel that. But I mean, most healers have healed with transformation card before, know what it's like. I've got previous videos on this that I've covered. It is worth it, even though you say it will reduces healing by 15%. Even though you're reducing healing by 15%, the amount of crits that you get make up for that. So the transformation card is a viable healing artifact, and now that it's an ally passive, that is very strong as well. And 10-second downtime is not really that much. You're not going to feel that throughout. I will show there is an animation to it. So you saw that I have the passive on. If I polarize an enemy, you're going to see that I get this shield icon or static icon. So that's going to last the entire time of the duration, and then basically just reproc it. So it's more so you're going to have to make the personal decision as a healer if you're going to drop a supercharge in this Eye of the Gemini build world until Eye of the Gemini is corrected, or if you're dropping Galvanize so that you can use it, because the other option to polarize, everything else is not worth it. I mean, with Eye Gemini, you don't need a supercharge generator. That's completely overkill. After Gemini changes, that's a possibility. Maybe you can drop, increase, like instead of arc, use static push. But the problem is arc is the only one that heals. So at least you're not impacting your heals that much by using arc lightning. I mean, Galvanize is still a better heal, but arc, at least you get something out of it. So that's the second passive. It's more a personal choice. It is very strong for healing. The reason why I don't have a second ally equipped, because I would use like Batman Who Laughs, but I didn't want his random card to proc the crits, just so that it interfere with the numbers. But just so you can see it as well, because I didn't actually show it. So if we go into our percentages here, 26%, 106%. If I use transformation card, that jumps up to 46 and 36. I'll take it off just so you can see the difference. 26, 106. And now if I use arc lightning, it's back up to 46 and 136. So it's not, so you have that possibility. So technically, yes, you could use transformation card as well and stack those. It goes to 66 and 166. So certainly in a pure healing build that can work. That's going to be overkill for like a Gemini build, but yes, that does drastically increase the potential. I mean, you have the minus 30% heals technically at that point, because you get the minus 15% from the ally and minus 15% trans. So that may take some more testing to actually see if it's viable, because just transformation card itself with those crits is worth it. I mean, I can't really see a situation where we need double, especially where Purple Healing Ray already pretty much procs off cooldown anyway. So that's the advantage, is that the more crits you'd get, the faster you'd earn Purple Healing Ray because of the increased heals. So that's another thing that like can be tested in combat with healers. I'm not a main healer. I heal when I need to, but I would not consider myself a main healer whatsoever. So if healers think they want to lose 30% of their healing just for the extra crits, I mean, that's a possibility as well. But like I said, it comes more down to a personal choice, but it is a very strong passive for electric players only. Okay, so taking a look at Static's second passive, we have Electric Overcharge. So Electric Overcharge, when using a supercharge, increases your critical ability and critical weapon chance for 10 seconds relative to the cost, and a rank 10 would be 3%, 6%, and 12% respectively. So as a baseline crits, I'm looking at 46% for both, and if I use a supercharge, in this case it was a 2500, you'll see they go up to 49 and 49, and then I have this symbol, static symbol, on top of my head for the duration. And then if I used a difference, so just to show, because it's going to be asked, and it was like worked on tests like this earlier, but for example, if I use like a 10k or any k, it's not going to stack. The stacking has been removed. So 46 and 46. If I use a 10k, you'll see that it goes up to 58 and 58. And if I use a 2.5k right after, it hasn't changed. It's going to remain at that point. It dropped below 58. So we can show that properly, just so that I don't screw that up. So we'll go the reverse. So my baseline is going to be 46 and 46. And if I use a 5k, that's going to go to 56 or 52 and 52. And if I use 2.5 right after, it's still going to say 52 and 52. So it's going to be the highest value. So for example, if I use the 2.5k first and then went to the 5k, then it's going to remain 52 because it's going to take the highest value. So it does overwrite, but it does not stack. So that's, and break it down there. So 46 was baseline, 49 was 2500 supercharge, 52 was a 5k, and then 58 was a 10k. And then I'll break down the Excel sheets in a moment. But what I wanted to basically get at in terms of how useful this will be, right now, without either Gemini being adjusted as of the recording of this video, Gemini changes aren't happening. This becomes a very powerful ally, especially for this overcharge ability, because you're going to be having constant use of supercharges, especially for like electric for circuit breaker, because already this is already a powerful electric ally because of static surge only working with electrify or polarize to be in line with or have that synergy with the electric healers. But electric overcharge will work for all roles. There's not too many supercharges or power sets out there using 10Ks. There are some viable ones, but not in a typical UG rotation. Most likely you're doing a lot of 2500s and a lot of 5Ks. But still, that's, with a healer spam group, you're basically using your supercharges off cooldown. So then you're looking at a constant 6% on the critical increases. Because there's no, it's 10 seconds, but most superchargers aren't last longer than 10 seconds. Their way, Neo Venom lasts slightly longer than 10 seconds, so you're pretty much getting everything within that window anyway. And then, say for example, like a supercharge like Berserk or Circuit Breaker, you already have that cooldown reduction on it if you're swapping in scrap. So then basically you're using it off cooldown, and you're constantly having this increased supercharge criticals. So the third ally, that's basically where it comes down to a question. You're using Batman and Laughs for the card procs. You get the increased stats, increased criticals. With the Gemini, Aquaman is still going to be powerful with the supercharge reduction for the ally. So you can use your ally more often and for ally damage. So, and then if we go back to when I tested Shazam with his increased combat ability for 6% might and 3% prec, that only really came out to like a 1% difference in damage. You'll see once I go to the spreadsheets here in a moment what the difference increase was on static. So right now, I mean, it's tough to tell you to level an artifact, even though we know that in the future the Gemini changes could happen, which would impact the ally, and you can't obviously fortify this into another. So it's going to come down to a choice. If you want to maximize your DPS for the next few months or whenever the Gemini lasts for, which, I mean, is all up in the air, who knows. But I feel like this is going to be a very, very powerful ally for DPS in the EOG meta. Outside of the meta, that's where it's going to be a bigger question, because you're not going to be using... It's certainly going to be great for when you have supercharges, and even 2500s, you can still get a lot off. So that's where it would be a bigger question mark. But in the EOG meta, there's no question that this is going to be handy. So let's jump into Excel and show you the breakdown. Okay, so what I've done here, my baseline rotation is just electric AoE, so rotation from, it's in my electric video if you guys want to see that guide. My artifact baseline was Transstrat and Scrap, because I didn't want Quizlet to interfere with the supercharge proc, and Scrap just had me more usage out of Circuit Breaker, so you wouldn't use Scrap 100% of the time, but in this case I didn't want UG to reflect that, interfere with the damage test, and didn't want Quizlet to interfere with the damage test. So my baseline rotation, we had 6 10-second parsers. You can see the criticals at 46 and 46, which is about 16 mil damage. When I used only Circuit Breaker, so it's the exact same rotation, just using Circuit Breaker off cooldown, we jumped up to 25 million total damage. The criticals, as you can see, remain the same, because Circuit Breaker just impacts your increase of bonus, not bonus, but increases your damage, rather than, it's just a damage buff. It's not actually a critical buff. And then if we looked at Circuit Breaker with the static ally passive, we jump up from 25 to 27 million, and as you can see, the criticals were 52% throughout that entire duration. And the crit percentages, so baseline with transformation was 46, baseline with the static, no, without statics, just Circuit Breaker and transformation was 44, or 45 if you round up, and then the average crits were 50%. So what that means, we've got a baseline damage, the percentage over increase. So basically going from my normal rotation to always using Circuit Breaker off cooldown, I had a 42% increase in damage. And then I had compared to the baseline over Circuit Breaker, I had 48.97. But the increase from just using the static ally, I got an extra 6.4% or 6.5%. So just by using the static ally, just having those extra criticals going up from 46 to 52, I had a 6.5% increase in damage. And like I said, using the Shazam ally was like 1%. So it's just being able to use those supercharges off cooldown. You pretty much have a constant increase in crits, which is just, you know, more crits, increased damage. So it's really going to be a powerful ally with that EUG meta. After the meta, like I said, it's going to be more of a question mark. It's still going to be viable, but if it's not going to be as powerful, it is just because you're not going to be using those supercharges off cooldown. So just keep in mind as well, this percentage increase was using a 5K. There's plenty of supercharges out there that use a 5K, like say like Ice, Atomic, Electric, Rage, etc. There's going to be other power sets like that'll be using more like 2500s to proc, but so obviously that percentage increase would be lower because we're looking at percentage increase. The going from 46 to a 25 was 49, so it's a 3%, and then this is the 6%. So obviously it's still going to be like say like a 2-3% increase, so it would still be handy. So there's the results there. If you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the comment section below. And take care, guys. We'll see you in the next video.